Thank you for joining us today. My name is Andrea Quintana. I'm joined by several different colleagues today, and we're going to share with you our semi-synchronous red plus green back to school model to help you get started. And again, this is a collaboration between both EdTech and CNI. So we're here to answer any questions to really help you understand what this model could look like in your classroom. So please feel free to drop them in the chat if you need any support with anything that we share with you today. So just to get started, what led you to choose semi-synchronous for a model for your classroom? You can think about these ideas. You can drop them in the chat if you want to join with us. But what makes you think that semi-synchronous could be the best model for your class? Just a little bit of reflection before we get started today. Knowing that there are many models to choose from, semi-synchronous could be your entire day, or it could be pieces of your day. And so we do recognize that and are here to support both of those ideas for you. Again, our objective for today is to take a deeper understanding of what this could look like. Again, with some students in person and some students at home, not knowing what that number might be every day, a semi-synchronous model will give you that opportunity to really meet both sets of students with live and asynchronous learning. And we're going to look at this through content-specific examples as well as through technology tools to support that. We'll start with some content considerations, thinking about standards, thinking about some instructional strategies, and move into exact examples for what this could look like in your classroom, and then finish up with some tech tool solutions, hoping to really get you at a place where you understand what this model might look like and feel like in your classroom. So again, please share any questions that you might have, because we do want you to leave with a pretty good understanding of what this might look like. So as we get started, semi-synchronous is just that. It's a mix of synchronous, meaning live teacher-directed lessons, and asynchronous learning time, where students are working independently, online or offline, as possible choices for that. This model will utilize live teaching, independent work. It could also be small groups, and mixing both in-person and at-home students. This does provide some space between these activities and some flexibility to kind of match a learning model that might be similar to what you've been doing through distance learning. This slide does have some additional links for you if you want to dive a little bit deeper into it. Again, students would meet for lessons, possibly whole group to get your day started. We encourage considering a staggered start time so that your students in class have an opportunity to join the classroom, get settled in before your live meeting with everyone gets started. That will allow you some flexibility in that morning. So consider a staggered start time, but start your whole day with your class all together. This would be that synchronous time where you could really focus on morning meeting, community meeting, social emotional, and really building a community of learners. Then the rest of your day will be a mix of synchronous learning, which could be the exact direct instruction, and asynchronous work. As you see through this schedule, it goes back and forth between what's synchronous and asynchronous. This could be with synchronous with all of your students in person while your at-home students are doing asynchronous work, and then it flips. Or this could be small groups of students doing different lessons at different times, rotating in with you for synchronous work to get a deeper dive for their differentiated instruction. So you can see through this schedule, it kind of goes back and forth, and it also covers ELA, math, and social studies and science. So you can kind of see where the asynchronous or small group work might come in, as well as the whole group and synchronous work. Now, as you consider this schedule, we want to build off of what's been going well for you, what's been working for distance learning, and how are your students currently handling distance learning. So we want to know that the benefits of this are that students receive some of the instruction all together at the same time. Again, that could be small groups of instruction or your whole entire class. That this model does provide opportunity for collaboration for at-home and in-person students to work together. And this does simplify your lesson planning because you are doing a majority of the direct instruction whole group or small group, but it's going to be consistent. This also allows some off-screen time for both you and for your students, which we know is important, just to provide some, that's a long day for them. Some of the considerations, and many of these we will walk through with possible solutions as well, is tech issues, behavior issues, and extended learning for early finishers, as well as considerations for accountability. Something you might need to consider is what tools or materials will your virtual learners need so that they can model similarly to what your in-person students will be doing. And how will those materials be either handled to get them or to not use materials at all. So that's just something for you to consider based on your own classroom. As we move into this semi-synchronous model, remember, this model is going to work for you if it's building off of things that have already been happening in your classroom. So if your students choose to stay home, will they have support? Knowing that semi-synchronous means that part of their day will be offline with you, do they have somebody at home that can support them? That would help this model to be more successful. If you don't really enjoy recording yourselves and really encourage live lessons to be taught by you live, this would be a good model for you to consider. If your students do have a capacity to work independently with some accountability, are they turning in those asynchronous work activities? Are they turning them in? Are they doing the reading and showing some accountability? Because much of this model is asynchronous, they will have to make sure that those accountability measures are working. So if your students are already getting pretty good at that, this would be a really good model for you to consider. And do you need some extra time to meet with struggling students, smaller groups of students, or differentiated? So the semi-synchronous model does allow that opportunity. And so this might be a model to consider if that's something that you feel you and your students need and want to incorporate into your day. So as you consider some of these ideas, we know that it's important to think about what this might look like. And so on this slide here, we actually have 2 examples that you can dive deeper into. The first one is a hybrid classroom environment where we went into a classroom and took some snapshots of what this looks like for this teacher. So you can click into this slide, you can navigate through, and we've also created it as a Pear deck so that it can be interactive. This does go into students' seating areas, materials and supplies, how to set up a classroom, how a teacher's workspace could possibly look using different devices, as well as just physical space for the teacher. This is a Pear deck, which means that it's interactive, hoping that you might take this idea and build it into your own classroom environment and build that capacity up for your students prior to them returning. Give them a snapshot of what your classroom might look like and set some of those expectations before they arrive to create a little bit more success and ease into the classroom once they get there. You might know your students really well as learners in their home environment, but now they're going to be entering a school environment. And so how can that look for them? How will they know what space is theirs? How will they know that they're safe? And to really reduce some of those anxieties. So take a look at that and consider adding a Pear deck for your students using your classroom as an example to get your students ready. The other idea that we're having here is a Jamboard, again, an activity that you can do with your students. You can click on, make a copy, and just share this with your students and work together to create some expectations. Again, doing this prior to students returning to school is going to set them up for a little bit more success once they do enter your classroom. What will the classroom look like? Giving them some autonomy and helping you to create those expectations. How will they know what to do once they get there? And really taking some time to do this prior to students returning to school. Talking them through this is really going to lower that anxiety once they do return. And so these are just 2 possible ideas that you can incorporate prior to returning to school that will really help set you up for success once students do return. So going back to the semi-synchronous model that we have for you today, we have some recommendations from our BSS team, our behavior support specialists, with a full YouTube channel of resources for you, as well as their contact information if these are ideas that you might need some additional support with. They're happy to help. And so really the idea of taking time to teach routines and expectations explicitly, knowing that students have been out of the classroom for a very long time, we can't assume that they remember how to be in classrooms and how to work cooperatively while keeping into consideration COVID expectations and social distancing. So spending some time to really explicitly teach that and model that prior to returning as well as upon returning will really help set up success. Creating space to include students in co-creating the expectations, like that Jamboard that we just shared earlier with you. How will that look for your students? And depending on their age and level, you might have different ways to really help students be part of that process with you so that when they get to school, they have some autonomy and they're really feeling comfortable in the space that's been created. How will you really reinforce positive behavior and corrective feedback? Again, knowing that students haven't been in school for a very long time, taking into consideration what this might look like for the last 38 days of school. And so have some ideas for what that might look like in your classroom and explicitly provide reinforcement for what that could look and sound like once students return. Knowing that it's been a challenging year for everyone, really prioritizing social and emotional teaching and learning, direct instruction about this, and how that can blend into academics. Really taking that time. I know it feels like we're in a rush once we get back to school to catch up with academics, but really taking the time and say, how are we going to use this opportunity of learning to build into next year and to really create successful students moving forward, and really taking that time to work on that social emotional learning and teaching and really helping students to know that school is a place that we want them to be, but we also want them to be safe and feel good about being in. And then the last thing is really creating supportive relationships with students, knowing that everyone has only been in their home for the last year. And some of our youngest learners really need some opportunities to connect with other peers, going back to how to create friends, how to create relationships at a socially distanced level. How do you high five or hug when that's not allowed anymore? So how do you show appreciation towards your peers, and really focusing on making sure that's intentional so that your students have some opportunities to connect with others, because this is the first time possibly ever, but at least for their short memories, that they've been back in school. So take some time to consider these ideas. And as always, reach out to our behavior support specialists if you need additional ideas, resources, or even collaboration about what this could look like in classrooms. All right, I think we're ready to start in some content considerations. Just some reflective questions as we get started is, what can your students learn without you? And what do you need to specifically and intentionally teach your students? How can you leverage whole group teacher instruction to make sure that what you spend that synchronous time on is the most meaningful? And then what can students do during their asynchronous time independently? How are we going to build up stamina of being in school and possibly on screen, off screen, independent for a much longer day than our students are really ready for and have been used to? So how can you start to build up some stamina for that independent work? And what are those activities that are going to be most meaningful? And then let's start preparing for next year rather than trying to catch up. Let's think about our students as learners and getting them prepared to be in a learning environment and to share collaboratively and to engage in curriculum and content rather than trying to catch up. So that's just a consideration as we move forward. Now, the ideas that we've created for you here are 2 accountability measures for both early finishers and for turning in asynchronous work. So we have the ideas here for early finishers, if they're in a synchronous setting or in an asynchronous setting, possibly setting up some open-ended creative activities that they can do, possibly activities that expand more than one learning day. Using choice boards to allow them to go and do some extra work if they've finished the work quickly, or doing any kind of investigation, project-based learning, or hands-on learning. Those are just some of the ideas we have. We know that this could be extensive for early finishers, so we encourage you to join our Padlet that can be dropped in the chat for you, or you can click on that link to share other ideas with teachers from around our district and see what ideas have been shared there as well. What other ideas for early finishers it could work in both the classroom environment as well as at home, to really keep students on pace, knowing that everybody might finish synchronous and asynchronous activities at different timelines. What will your students do once they're finished? Again, knowing that social distancing and typical fast finisher activities might not be available, we would love to hear your ideas. Again, some ideas for accountability as well, which we know is important, especially around asynchronous work. Doing things like random name pickers to allow students to answer questions both at home and in the classroom during synchronous time, making sure that you have an opportunity for both in-person and at-home students to respond to answers. And using a random name picker might help you remember students that you can't see in front of you. Do some volunteer report backs, allowing students to become the teacher for periods of the day, where they can share any learning that just happened asynchronously and report that back to the whole group. Might also create some connection for them and give them an opportunity to shine and share the knowledge that they just learned asynchronously, providing some additional accountability. Having opportunities for things that are sticky and tricky, lots of questions, lots of opportunity for students to repeat content or information that they learned asynchronously or during synchronous time. And what do they still have questions about? How will you build in time for things that are sticky and tricky? And then also thinking about a waterfall report out, allowing even your students in person to join in a waterfall, meaning that everybody has an opportunity to think about a problem that we just worked on, and everybody's reporting their answer at the same time so that nobody gets left out and everybody has an opportunity to report their own thinking rather than possible an answer that their friend might have shared earlier. And so again, these are just a couple accountability ideas that we have. Thinking of synchronous and asynchronous learning, what other ideas do you have? Again, please click on that Padlet, share some ideas, or look at ideas that others have already posted. These ideas have been for all 4 of our sessions, so you might find an idea that somebody else might have shared either yesterday or earlier today. We want to make sure that these ideas become robust, and maybe that you can find some ideas to add into your learning as you return back to school. Now, to help with semi-synchronous learning, we are diving into 2 tech tools today. We're going to dive into Google Meet as a possibility to really amp up and kind of shift the focus during synchronous learning time, as well as Pear, a way for students to be able to communicate and work together during synchronous work, also raising that accountability feature for them and giving them some new ways to think about learning. And so these are the 2 tools that we're going to be diving deeper into today. And just real quick, in the chat, which of these 2 tools do you feel like you would need more support in adding into your current curriculum and content? Which of these tools have you had less familiarity with over distance learning? And so we can make sure to really dive deeper into that one tool. Thanks for sharing those ideas in the chat with us. We do have our EdTech friends here with us, and I can see that Pear is going to be the area that we definitely want to spend some additional moments on. And so I am confident that Tina's going to share so many great ideas for Pear with you. But not before Maggie really dives into what this could look like for content and really making some connections for what asynchronous and synchronous learning could look like with both ELA and math. It's all yours, Maggie.
Great, thank you. So let's bring it into some of our essential standards and make this a little more concrete. So, one of our essential standards in kindergarten, for example, is RFK 3A. And this standard really focuses on that one to one letter correspondence and is a crucial standard in that grade level. And so, in a semi synchronous model, we would provide whole group instruction on this standard, engage in intentional practice with all of the students, and then go into asynchronous practice, that break off between the synchronous and the asynchronous. And so, one way that students could really engage in that asynchronous work would be to use like a word work routine where students could practice targeted letters with multisensory means, like tracing letters with their finger while saying the sounds of that letter, pointing to a sheet with targeted letters, saying the sounds of each letter, or even playing a collaborative game like bingo. Using the letter sounds could be effective practice. And when they return from that practice, the teacher can check for understanding using any selected accountability or reporting routine already established in that class. And that could also be done asynchronously if you set it up that way. And so here's what it might look like. In kindergarten, many schools use foundations to teach this essential standard. And so when teaching semi-synchronously with foundations, the teacher can use the Fun Hub to project simultaneously to the students at home and in person in the classroom. That's that synchronous component. And many of the Foundations Kit resources are already available on the Fun Hub. And so those materials do not require extra creation on the part of the teacher to get those materials. Now, often in a foundations lesson, the students utilize a magnetic letterboard to engage with the content. But in the classroom, the magnetic boards are provided for the students. However, for students at home, you might consider using a Pear Deck for immediate feedback on their progress during a lesson. So to set up that Pear Deck, you can build a Google slide with the necessary images, and we have an example here on the slide, and then put the Pear Deck link into the Google Meet chat. Now, on your teacher dashboard in Pear Deck, you can monitor what the students are doing as you go through that lesson. And one benefit of this is that the students cannot move between frames or slides when presenting a live session. They have to be on the slide where you are at. And so you can keep them there as they're interacting with their boards, as they're interacting with writing or tracing the letters. They would have to be there with you. Now, in an asynchronous component, you could change it to student paced, where the students can work on it at their own pace, and you can even embed audio into the Pear Deck so they would be able to listen to your directions. And so the link on this screen here, will take you to a student-paced Pear Deck that you could use with your students. And the other link will take you to the Foundations Fun Hub that has those Foundations resources already available to support your teaching. And so that Pear Deck could be a good alternative for items that are not consumable. And so if they are consumable, then students could just use their consumables both at school and at home. But if for some reason they don't have them, that Pear Deck could be a good alternative. Now, on the right side of the screen, you'll see an example lesson from Level K in Foundations, and it shows exactly how you would use the Foundations Fun Hub and the Pear Deck within that same lesson. And so continuing that work with the students, utilizing those components would allow you to be able to teach that lesson in a synchronous environment and then be able to send the students for asynchronous work afterwards. Now, this slide shows how that Pear Deck can be utilized further with Foundations. Students can write and type to build words. For example, this is a picture of the student notebook, and they could even use draggables for some of the Foundations assignments. You could take a screenshot of a page from the Foundations consumable and place it into a Google slide where it can then be presented as a Pear Deck like what's on the picture here. Now, Pear Deck also has an immersive reader that can read the text on the Pear Deck page for students. And so that immersive reader can also help out as well. Now, Not every grade level utilizes foundations, so let's think about it from the lens of a different grade level. This one is from 5th grade, and this standard focuses on comparing informational text structure. And so in a semi-synchronous model, same thing, we would provide whole group instruction on the standard, engage intentional practice with the students, and then go into asynchronous and small group practice. And so one way that students could engage in the practice would be to use a reading routine where students could collaboratively discuss and compare text structure, or even listen to partner text to practice that comparison. Using any selected accountability or reporting routine already established in your classroom, the teacher can then work with a small group while having a teacher dashboard open to monitor the asynchronous work that's happening in the classroom. So now here's what it would look like with Benchmark. And so when teaching semi-synchronously with Benchmark, the teacher can use Benchmark Universe, such as the close reader or the weekly presentation, to project simultaneously to the students at home and in person. And many of the Benchmark resources are already available on that website and do not require extra creation on the part of the teacher to get those materials. Now, often in a Benchmark lesson, students need their close readers to engage with the content. Well, in the classroom, those close readers, once again, are provided for the students. However, for the students at home, they may not have their consumable. And once again, you could consider setting up a Pear deck for that lesson. And so to set up the Pear deck, once again, you would use screenshots of the needed passages and the graphic organizers, place them into one Google slide deck with the drawing or text component from Pear deck, and that would allow the students to type in responses to your questions or even annotate the text by highlighting and adding in notes as needed. Now, for automatic access, you can assign assign this copy to a join link from Pear deck and place it right into the chat. And so you can copy that link, you put it right into the chat, and the students can click on there and go right into the Pear deck. It would just open up right automatically for them. And so the link on this screen will take you to a student-paced session of a Pear deck as an example. And the other links will take you to a Benchmark week 3 presentation and the graphic organizer, the close reading question, and the objective that you could utilize for this lesson. And so on the right side of this screen, you'll see an example lesson from 5th grade, Unit 8, Week 3, Lesson 14, and it shows exactly how you would use the Benchmark lesson and Pear deck within that exact same lesson. And you could use these tools simultaneously with your students to give them that access to the content while still being able to monitor what they are doing synchronously and asynchronously. And so this slide shows how the Pear deck is being utilized with Benchmark. Students can annotate right on top of the text that is needed for the assignment. And so for this particular assignment, I pulled out the close reading prompt, put it right on the slide along with the directions. And then I took out the exact pieces of text from the close reader that the students were going to need. I did not have to just get the whole close reader and just put it into the slide deck. I just grabbed what I needed and put it right in there. And so this can also help chunk text into manageable pieces for the students, which most of us know is a very effective strategy for our students that, that struggle with reading. Now, they can also use the Pear deck to fill in graphic organizers from Benchmark, just like the ones shown here on the screen. They can use a typing feature with the drawing tool, and they could type right over that image. And you as a teacher would have the ability to watch what's happening on every single student's screen as they were working on it. Now, as the students go through the literacy lessons, the teachers can provide independent and collaborative activities for them. The choice boards are a great way to engage students and provide them with some agency to choose activities throughout the week. And so you can model these activities after common daily 5 activities that you've had in the past. And with these choice boards, you may want to consider what accountability measures you would have for these stations, but this could be part of that asynchronous work that students could do while you're meeting with a small group, especially for those early finishers. So One more connection here. Let's bring it to math now. This one is from 3rd grade. And this standards focuses on using strategies to develop fluency in multiplication and division within 100. And in a semi-synchronous model, it follows that exact same process. Whole group instruction, intentional practice, and go into independent asynchronous practice and or small groups. And so one of the ways that students could engage in that independent asynchronous practice would be to use math centers, where the students can apply your strategies to application problems, math projects, or games. And through your accountability system, you can watch what the students are doing to ensure that the students are engaged fully in that asynchronous work. So here's what it might look like in stepping stones. They can operate in a similar manner where they project the resources simultaneously to students at home and in person. And as mentioned on the slide, Stepping Stones resources are already available within the Origo Slate app inside ClassLink. And similarly, Pear Deck can also be a great way to provide resources to students at home when they do not have access to them. On the right side of the screen is a math lesson from Stepping Stones that shows you how you can teach Stepping Stones with a semi-synchronous model. You show a Google slide for choral counting, where your students at home and in the classroom are counting along with you to develop that math fluency. And then from your Stepping Stones guide, you would teach steps 2 and 3 to the students simultaneously. The next step would be to have students work on questions 2 and 3A from their journals in independent asynchronous practice, or you could even set them into breakout rooms to do it collaboratively. You could have a Pear Deck set up for that. If students do not have their journals at home, you can once again give them that Pear Deck option, and they're able to annotate over that page and show their work for you. When the students return from that asynchronous work, the teacher can have the students show and share their strategies for number 3 by holding up their journal to the camera, or even just displaying their Pear Deck page from the teacher dashboard. And you have the ability to do that, where you could show their work, and you can even do it anonymously, where you don't have to show the student's name, but you could still show the work. You could then have students play an online fundamentals game, seeing double from Origo as a whole group or in small groups, and work on finishing the journal page asynchronously, which you could assign through Origo Access, or you could even, once again, place that into a Pear Deck for students to finish asynchronously while you work with a small group of students. And of course, additionally, you can engage in other activities during that independent practice time as small groups. And listed on this slide are just some additional ideas that you could think about for that connection. And then, of course, just like in literacy, you can have a choice board during math instruction as well. They can engage in independent practice with iReady lessons, Khan Academy, Desmos, other games, and there may even be opportunities for students to play games or work together over Google Meet in small groups on these activities. It's really up to you as the teacher. A choice board like this could be completed throughout the week with an accountability system of your choice to determine how students will demonstrate their learning from these choices. And of course, for that additional asynchronous independent work in math, students could use their Stepping Stones journal, iReady assessments, other asynchronous math activities. You would have these students work on these independent assignments as you see fit, but then you'd also want to consider what accountability measures you would include for those components as well. And so that kind of covers it for the curriculum connections. And I'm going to pass it off to Tina now, and she's going to talk to us about some hybrid tech tool solutions.
Thank you, Maggie. Maggie always has such like a great calm voice. I just love hearing her in the afternoon. By the way, thank you for joining us this afternoon, because we get how hard it is to pull that like 3 to 4 o'clock like time space. So we just need a minute to kind of wake up. I think I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, if you wouldn't mind, Maggie, because it looks like in the chat it was kind of a full-on wanting to look at Pear Deck. So that was brilliant on Andrea's part to ask that question. And so I went ahead and pulled up a Pear Deck. we're going to have a very short sort of quick overview of Pear Deck. So I'm presenting my screen here in a second. So what we're going to go over is just some tips or ideas on how to use Pear Deck in this semi-synchronous kind of space, how Pear Deck is used for instruction, and then sort of a way to organize how you'd want to use Pear Deck for semi-synchronous instruction. So let's go over an idea of Pear Deck really quick and kind of what that is, okay? So Pear Deck is actually an add-on. So it's something that's added onto Google Slides. So if you've ever used PowerPoint in your life, you can actually open any of those types of things on Google Slides. I used to be a huge fan of Active Inspire, and I was really annoyed because I'm like, oh, I'm going in the space. Active Inspire isn't working out that well. It's kind of, well, not super easy, but you can convert Active Inspire over into like PowerPoint or a PDF, and then you can open that in Google Slides. And a lot of the activity components aren't necessarily able to work that quick or easily, but I was able to use a lot of those backgrounds or different tools and then add some Pear Deck or some Google Slides stuff to that. The way that Pear Deck works is it adds interactive questions or drawings that allow students to participate fully in a Pear Deck. So you can basically turn any lesson into a formative assessment. Now, what's nice for the semi-synchronous model is that you can use this in two different ways. You can use it in a teacher-paced mode, and it forces the students to stay synchronously on the same slide as you're on. And you can seamlessly switch that over to a student-paced mode where students can work through all of those pieces independently, or you can set it up that way to begin with on that student-paced mode. Okay, so before I go on in our session, I'm just going to show you how easy it is to create a Pear Deck. Now, the first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to open a Google slide. You can either create a brand new one. Maggie was talking about some great ideas for taking screenshots and basically putting them in here as the background. You can either, on a Pear Deck, you can't necessarily mess up the background, but if you would like to add something as a background, you just select that background image right there and you can put it in the background of a slide. So you can take screenshots of activities, books, different things. So you can use Pear Deck templates or you can add them to your slide deck. So I have a slide deck here that's already built out that we usually use for our trainings, okay? So basically just have a slide lesson. Once you have Google Slides open, this is where that add-on part comes in, okay? So up here on the toolbar, there is an option here that says add-ons. Now, if it's kind of weird because we pushed out the add-on, we tried to anyway, to everybody at APS because we have Pear Deck Premium. We managed to have a trial for it between January and May, and so we got the higher version of Pear Deck where we have all of the different tools and you can have a dashboard and you can respond back to student answers and everything. And we saw such a huge use of it that we ended up buying it for next year for all pre-K through 12. So we will have Pear Deck Premium next year as well. So there may be a little pair that just shows up. If not, go to add-ons and there should be an option that says Pear Deck. If not, go to add-ons, get add-ons, and then type in Pear Deck. Eventually my add-ons will come, I think. Type in Pear Deck and then you'll be able to select that add-on and just click on it, and then it'll say a little box that says Pear Deck has been added, right? Once it's been added, now when you go to the add-ons option, it's going to show up. So see where it says Pear Deck for Google Slides add-on, and then I'm going to open it. So everything runs from within Google Slides. It basically attaches a little window here on the side or a menu on the right that allows you to run Pear Deck from inside Google Slides. So with Pear Deck, and I'm actually just going to go on to this next slide on my screen, you have 6 different question options you can add to any of your slides. You can make a slide multiple choice. You can add text. You can have students draw on the slide. It has a star because that's usually premium, but we have premium. That's really great for the younger students. Calculate numbers, having draggables where they can drag little images on the screen. And you can link a website. So students aren't going outside of the slide deck. They're staying inside it to look at websites. So the way that you do this is you just select which type you want. And so I'm selecting the multiple choice one. And it's going to give you some options here to add those multiple choice questions. So I'm going to say, like, which one do you think is going to be better? Would you prefer text? Would you like multiple choice? Do you want to do drawing? Okay, so you can add any type of thing on here that you would like to make any slide that you create. Absolutely, yes, you can, Renee, but that's kind of a yes, but conversation. There's draggable numbers. So once you do that and I hit update, from the teacher point of view, it's not really going to look like you have those multiple choice options. What you're going to see is this cute little Pear. I think his name's Perry down here, and it will say what type of Pear deck it is, and it's just going to show up. So once it's in a Pear deck, you can just add it to your slides. Now, even better than that, because I don't want to have to think about making a slide for this, they also have a template library, and they are building on it all the time. So you can find different templates for beginning of lessons, during, end. They also have social emotional, and they have ones for different content areas, including K through 2. And it does work on iPads as well as computers and tablets. So it works on all devices. Math, science, social studies. So if I did want to, let's pick one of the ones for the littles. Here's one of the drawing slides where the students can write in that letter. So if I like that template, all I have to do is click on it twice, or I can drag it over, and it's just going to drop that slide right into my slide deck. I have seen teachers use this and completely like builds an entire lesson just out of the templates. And what's nice about the templates is you can change them as well. You don't have to keep them this way. So if you want that short vowel that's an E instead, you can change it to like get, set, met, and then change the little image. So all you have to do is click on it, and you'll be able to change those different pieces on the slide. So it's really nice that you can take those templates and use them. Now that we've kind of just barely touched the surface of doing this, and we do have a Pear Deck training, but just showing you how easy it is to say, go to the add-on, open up Pear Deck, go over here on the right, and you can either add your own questions and it'll drop them in there, or you can check out the template library. Once you're okay with that, you can start the lesson. So up here, you are going to have to launch the lesson from this window on the right in order for it to open up for Pear Deck. Now, here's where the semi-synchronous aspect comes into place. You can create links to different student-paced activities if you want students to work on certain things asynchronously. Or you can create the instructor-paced activity, and it'll force the students to go along with you at the exact same time. And then you can flip it over to student-paced right in the middle. Say, okay, you guys, you have 15 minutes, put a timer on your computer, or I'll put a timer in the classroom with the meet in the background, and you can hear it ring. And then you say, okay, everyone's coming back for that instructor-paced time again, and then you can flip it right on back to instructor-paced lesson, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and just show you what it looks like from an instructor-paced point of view. And what's going to happen is it's going to have something called a Pear Deck launcher, and it's going to give them a code. And once the students get really used to using this code, they do a pretty good job at knowing how to get in there very quickly. I used to have, they also have something in here called Flashcard Factory. We could talk about that if you would like to take the training, but they do have a Flashcard Factory, and I would have Pear Deck, so we'd have Flashcard Factory Fridays. And so they were just ready. Like they already knew that that was going to be our Pear Deck time. And so they would run in there and pull it up and do it really fast. It is taking a while because I have about 4 slide decks open and about 2 Pear Deck presentations running because I wanted to give you the link to one of them. But it's going to generate a code, and you can have students go to joinpd.com and put in this code, or you can even just go right here to this link option and click on it, and you can share that link right inside the chat. And so students just can click on it and go straight to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a student one here. And the first time that they use it, it'll say, make sure you log into Google. So it's going to pull up this little Google screen. And if the student's used to logging into Google, or they're on a Chromebook, or the student has logged into Google on their iPads, they usually just need to select themselves and not even have to put in a password. So since I use this so often on this computer, I'm not even going to put in a password. I'm just going to select myself. So once the student's in there, from the teacher point of view, you're going to see that one student's going to show up. And then once there's students inside that Pear Deck, you can launch it and then go through the Pear Deck all together. So I have my one student connected, and I can start that class. And I can go through all of these different activities. And well, this is kind of, I'm trying to find one of the slides that actually has a question on it. So, there we go. So here's the one that was that drawing slide we just threw in there, right? So from the student's point of view, you're going to notice it moved right to that slide, and now they have the ability to draw on this slide where it can say, okay, you're supposed to put an A here. If I'm going to be an actual studious student, I probably shouldn't make those all capital, but that's okay. So I put the, letter on there. I feel very proud of myself. From the teacher point of view, I can show those responses to my class, but the responses are going to be anonymous. So you can show them to the students and be like, oh, wow, everybody did such a good job. We have A's, oops, one of the students put a U, so cut, I guess that's still a word, but is also a word. So let's think about how we want to maybe look at the picture on the side, so you can mention that. And also with Pear Deck Premium, there is a teacher dashboard where you can see which students are answering, but that's never going to be showing up right on the screen for them to see everybody's answers. Okay. You can also lock the screen or set timers where students have a certain amount of time to complete that answer, so you're not waiting for like little Johnny. You'd be like, Johnny, 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 write it. So the timer will go onto their slide and it'll play while they do it. So here is where you can go to these 3 dots and you can turn on student paced mode. The students who are inside that Pear Deck just switch seamlessly right into student paced mode. As long as they're in there, they don't even have to do anything. Once you're done with the session, you just hit end, and you will have all of the student answers, and it will publish a PDF of their answers called Student Takeaways, where you can refer back to it later and the students can have it. So what we've built for you guys, and that was very brief overview. I'm going to give you some more tools today, though, is in our presentation from today. Here is a quick Pear Deck getting started guide. So if you click on that, it'll tell you how to go through that really fast. If you want to experience Pear Deck, and just that's kind of the best way I learn, is you just get into the Pear Deck. You can click on this link and go through an actual student-paced Pear Deck where it gives you strategies for using synchronous and asynchronous at the same time. And if you would like that, I actually have it up, and I will put this link in the chat here in a minute. So I'm going to give you that student-paced link, and I'm going to put it in the chat so you guys can take it for later. Sorry to people who this has a recording on, but you can still get that same link right here if you go here. So that's Pear Deck in a nutshell. Google Meet is another thing you can look at for going for semi-synchronous, to go from synchronous to asynchronous instruction back and forth. One of those ways to do that is to create those built-in breakout rooms through Google Meet, or you can create clickable breakout rooms using something called a nickname code. So that's what you use today to get into this session. It was a nickname code, which is back to school, right? That was the one we used today. So you can create a link to those nickname codes. So you just put g.co/meet and then whatever you want it to be. So you could have put back to school today, and it will create a clickable link. And what's kind of important about that is if you do want to create groups for specific purposes, or you want to break up students and you don't want them to be super randomized and you don't have time to do it through the Meet, you can add those links right here and then put students in particular groups for that synchronous or asynchronous space if they are going to work on a specific worksheet or do something all together. So that is pretty much a really quick kind of overview of a couple tools you can use for semi-synchronous instruction. If you do have any more questions, you can put them in the chat, or oh, and you can link onto this too. I think our slides at the end of this one. And if you have any tech issues, we have some ideas here for the most common things we get calls and tickets and things on to kind of troubleshoot some stuff. But if you do want more info on a training, or you want a full-on Pear Deck training or anything, the links in this presentation, you can fill out a Q&A form. You can request a training and we can do a one-on-one meet, or you can do it for your staff if you think that's something that they would be interested in. Or as a whole group, just fill out this request for training right here and we can come out and set up a training with you guys. So I'm going to hand it back to curriculum and instruction again.
See, there we go. All right. Thank you so much, Tina, for that. We definitely appreciate all of your expertise and your knowledge about Pear Deck, because that can provide a lot of really great ideas as to how this can work for our semi-synchronous model, or really any model, you know, for that. I'm going to share my screen one last time. Here, there we go. It's going to come right on up. So please feel free to reach out to any member of the TLN team here. You can visit our TLN hub for more resources. We just added some additional guidance and supports to the website there. You can also visit our YouTube channel. We have all of our components videotaped and already listed on that YouTube channel. So if you missed any of the sessions from yesterday or earlier, you are more than welcome to watch them on the TLN YouTube channel. And Tina, correct me if I'm wrong, but we also place those on the EdTech YouTube channel. Yes, she's nodding her head. Yes, perfect. Excellent. So please feel free to reach out to any of us for any questions and support that you may be looking for as we go back to see our wonderful little ones here on April 5th. And we have some additional resources here for you. We've provided the links to our hybrid overview slides and YouTube video. We've also provided some of the most important links regarding the curriculum for Mystery Science, Benchmark Universe, Origo Slate, and the Foundations Fun Hub for whatever program that you use. We also have a link to the TLN Hub website. Please, please, please check that out. We are continuously updating it for additional supports all throughout this year. And of course, from EdTech, we've linked in a couple of those really critical resources that can really help make your instruction just shine as you go back with your students here. And so please feel free to utilize any of these resources here at any moment. And so now we recognize that there's about 6 more minutes left, but we want to open it up for a Q&A. So go ahead and feel free to unmute and ask questions or ask for clarifications or talk to us a little bit about what you're envisioning for this upcoming month.
I have a question about like a classroom setup, and so you were talking about, the students at home, students in the classroom. So what would you suggest in terms of the classroom setup with the technology? I have a one Promethean board right now, like I think everybody does. And like at home, everything is here. But when I go back, like how would I make it work, like for the students at home and students in the class?
So Tina, go ahead. I know you have some really great ideas about extending the screen to Promethean boards.
So there's a couple of different ways, and what they're doing right now today, we're getting resources ready to send. They're talking to principals. That's why I keep looking over here. So if you think I'm crazy, that's what's going on. Talking to principals right now about setting up devices in the classroom. And so there's a couple of different ways you can think about it. Is have your computer face you, and then run your Meet on your computer so you can see all of your students. And then on your computer, run the cord like you always do to your Promethean board behind you. And you can run it as an extended desktop. So you can have your Meet going on here and then have your presentation and what you're doing over there behind you on the board. That does tend to work out. You may have to go within Meet because for some reason we're realizing that Meet wants to pick up the speakers from the Promethean board like they're a microphone, and they're not. So if you go on the bottom right of your Meet with those 3 dots, you can go into settings and change your audio back to your computer. Going with audio and video though, we are going to be getting, every teacher is going to be getting a camera and a microphone. I don't know exactly how they picked teacher, so I'm just throwing that out there. But they have been ordered, and we are making a video on how to set those up too, because it's like a 180 camera, so you can see basically 180 degrees, like a longer shot of things, so you can see everybody in the class, and students at home can see more stuff. And then we are incorporating a Bluetooth speaker to that, so that way it's like a little speaker that you can take around with you. It's not the type like, old school cool like operators or whatever, but it's the little like speaker that you can take around the room with you, and so it can pick up noise and stuff. So we are making videos for that, and then we are also adding in what types of cords and different things and what they're called, because my husband does AV, and he would get annoyed at me all the time because he's like, it's a VGA cable, or it's a USB-C, not a USB. And I'd be like, I don't know, I just need a cable thingy. So we have the, and I'm an EdTech, right? So, but we have a sheet that's going to have kind of the vocab words for that. So if you do need to call the tech team or talk to someone, or we need to get something, you can easily, hopefully, determine which one of those things that you would need.
So just to clarify, so I would envision like the Promethean board behind me, and I am in front of the Promethean board, and my computer is facing me, where I am having my Google Meet running, and then the rest of the class in person in the classroom, they are also like facing me as well. Is that order? The Promethean, teacher, my computer, and the rest of the class in the classroom in person.
Yes. And then what we're hoping with the camera is you can kind of take the camera and flip it around versus like trying to flip your computer around with all of your, cords attached to it. So if you do want to show students, like look at the students in class, and because you don't really want to keep that separation, but it's just one way so they can see you talking and pointing on things at the board, so it feels like they're actually in the class.
Okay. All right, sounds good. And then the cameras that you talked about, is that gonna be like every teacher is getting one camera, like before we actually start the in-person learning back at school?
I'm going to say, because I don't want to get in trouble, and this is being but I am going to say that they're trying every single effort to get them in before April 5th. And if it's not on April 5th, I'm sure it will be very close to that.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Go ahead, Lila. I saw your hand pop up.
Hi, Tina. I have a question as well as far as when we get back to the room. One is are we going to have that echoing that sometimes we get when we have two computers really close?
It kind of depends on how you're running it. So we're also making something for that, because technically the students don't have to be in the meet. The students are there. So you can have the students in the class not even get on the meet, but you can have them, like Pear Deck, you can still send them the link or have Pear Deck running to them, because they can still run with it, but they don't have to have the meet running. Some teachers are saying, well, I'd really like to have that. One way to help with that is to, and we added it on like a list of stuff for students to bring, is headphones. So to have headphones, and then to get them used to muting the microphone if you would like to run your class like that. We're trying not to like dictate it. We're just trying to give you, some tips or tricks for doing that. Some teachers don't like the idea of extending your desktop, because sometimes it's hard to do. So you can do it with two devices. You just have to remember to mute one device. And then my other tip is to right click on a tab, and you can mute the site as well. So if you are running something that's going to be picked up like on the board or something, you can mute the site and then right click on the tab again to unmute it again. So that way you're not pulling the sound from the site really quick.
That sounds confusing. I'm glad you're going to make a video.
We're going to make a video, and we're going to make like most common, like, thoughts for things that are probably going to.
Okay, so
probably didn't have to think about. No.
Yeah. Okay, so then my second question, if let's say, so your suggestion is that the kids in person are not on the meet at all, right? Okay, so then when you go to present your screen, you're presenting that on the Pro board?
Right. So that's why we were kind of say to, well, that's that weird idea of extending your desktop. So the meet's running here with everybody at home. It's on your screen facing you. The lesson that you're teaching is extended on the board, so that way the students in the class who are facing you can see the board, but then you can also still from this screen share your meet, so the students at home can see it too, and they can see it on the camera behind you.
Okay, so when we extend the board, the Pro board, you'll have some directions on that?
Yes.
Perfect.
For
okay.
PC and Mac, which we think most teachers are going to be using. Probably not a Chromebook, but.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Should the volume be off on the Promethean board?
Not necessarily. The way you might want to think about managing that is you still have your meet in front of you, so you can mute your meet. Like you can mute, like I can go here and I can mute me. I said, so you can't hear me. So you might want to, if you're gonna show a video or do something on your board, you might want to just mute you on the meet so it's not super picking it up, and then show it to the whole class and the students can still hear it. And then you can unmute and start talking again. The thing with sharing through Google Meet is the best way to share your screen if you are going to be presenting something or something has noise is to share a tab, not a screen or a window, but share a straight tab, and it'll pull in the sound from within that tab.
I have another question about the Pear Deck. So I'm teaching first grade, and so when I go back, say that I want to use the Pear Deck with the kids, do they have to download the Pear Deck app first on their iPad? And
no, that's a good question though. Because Pear Deck is a completely web-based learning platform, and it'll run as well on an iPad. That's what I always ran it on, was always iPads. So if you're, I'm assuming you're using, I don't know, I'm assuming, are you using Seesaw or, yeah. So on Seesaw, I would take that link of the Pear Deck and I would just set it up like a Seesaw activity for the day and kind of say, here's what we're doing, and then link that Pear Deck in it. I'd probably like, you know, make it early or have it and then launch it. So that way the students can get in there through the activity through Seesaw, or if they are on a Meet, they can click on the link within chat, but just know it's almost like the Meet's going to disappear and they can hear you. But they can't have the two of those open they can't have them open at the same time, but you can't really have them next to each other. It would be running through the Pear Deck. But what's nice is the Pear Deck forces them to be on that slide with you instead of them being like, I'm over here and I'm doing whatever. So yeah, that's that's how it runs. Is it just runs straight through a web-based link.
Yeah, I was just asking it because I know the Google Slides, that's a different. Like I know that Pear Deck is kind of like embedded into Google Slides when we're working on it. Like it's not, it's within. You said it's like from within the Google Slides. When the students are doing it, like they don't have to have any additional app installed. They just need that. Okay.
Yeah, it just runs right through whatever. I'm assuming Chrome, Safari, whatever they're using.
Deborah's had her hand up for a while. What was your question? Oh, you're on mute.
Oh my gosh, I still do that. I can't believe I still do that after all year. Anyhow, you answered the question. It was embedded in the, you just answered about Seesaw. Yeah, and I didn't mean to, my Wi-Fi's acting up, so it kept beeping. Sorry, thanks.
Oh, it's okay.
Any other questions or discussions that you wanted to bring up at this time? We know that it's already 4:05, and we know that many of you would like to get some rest at the end of this day. So please do not feel like you have to stay on. But if you do want to ask a question, please feel free to do so.
And I just saw Teresa. Let's see. Right? Is she still here, or did she bounce out?
She bounced out.
I saw that she said what kind of headphones are compatible with Chromebooks. It's usually the ones that have that old-fashioned plug to put into the headphone jack.
Perfect. Lila, I saw your hand, and I saw Renee as well.
Renee, why don't you go first since I've already asked one?
Oh, thank you. Hey, I was just wondering, this is something I've kind of battled with all year. When I am showing a YouTube video just from my Google Meet, I put it in the present mode, obviously, and then I go full screen. I cannot see my kids, and I can't have another screen open to where I can see them, and it's driving me crazy. And so I'm thinking there must be something to do about this that I just don't know. Is there, or is that just a glitch that's a problem with Google?
It's kind of a glitch that's a problem with Google. The one thing I will say, okay, I will add in, there's a PD resource for Pear Deck. The one thing with Pear Deck is you can embed websites, and one of those sites is a YouTube video, but you can't get the regular link like a YouTube video. You have to kind of pull this embed one, so there's like a trick to it. But what I like about that is you can open the YouTube video, and it'll open on every student's screen, and it'll have the slide next to it that says like, watch this video and check it out, and everyone can run it and then watch it that way as it's running. So I did like that because you can run that through Pear Deck too with the YouTube video.
So then you can still see the kids on your Google Meet while they're in the Pear Deck doing the video?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to wrap my brain around this. So
I'm like, it's weird, but I don't know how to explain it better. I'm sorry.
No. I think I get what you're talking about. I'll have to play with it and see. So let me ask you, in playing with it, can I log on as a student in and see the Pear Deck side from the student perspective as I have a teacher window open as well? So I can kind of see what's happening on their side? Because that's another issue I have is like, okay, I see what's happening with mine, but what does it look like for them? So
Google has a protected domain. So that's the @aps.edu. Anybody who's in there can only do aps.edu. Since Pear Deck is an add-on, you can actually use that join.pd link and the code, and you can get in there. So I have done that where I built my teacher one and then just even opened the tab right next to it and then open joinpd.com and open the, the link and then just kind of did this weird circular mess. But you can see what it's doing.
Okay, I'm gonna try that. That will probably help me wrap my brain around this a little bit better, but I'm gonna give it a shot and see what happens. Thank you guys so much. This has been awesome. I really appreciate it. Have a good one.
All right, thanks.
Okay. You ready for mine, Maggie?
Absolutely. I'm
Okay.
all ready.
Okay, so there are some amazing things out there on Facebook, the slides, the slide deck. I've tried a couple times to turn one or two of those slides into Pear Deck.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do that? I have not been successful.
So
Like, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go right ahead. What have you tried?
One of the examples is there's one on coins and money where they drag it. They drag the coins up to make $1.25. And so I've tried to make that into a Pear Deck, just that slide, but I can't get it to go.
Well, and Tina, you can definitely talk more to this as well. But that's one of the things that I've found with Pear Deck is that if I have lots of manipulatives that I want students to do on a particular slide, lots of those draggables and manipulatives, I normally do a Jamboard instead, because then I can actually move the items around. Because once it's in a Pear Deck, unless I've put the draggable component of the Pear Deck on it, I can't move the images around. They are stuck there on the screen. And so I would have to have the Pear Deck component of draggables in order to be able to drag things onto the screen. And Tina, maybe you're able to clarify further if I got that incorrect.
Same exact thing. I was thinking the same thing as Maggie, is that I would use a Jamboard because you can pull in like those images and kind of set it up like a template. And then students can have their own frames to kind of play with things and move things around and stuff. That's where Jamboard's pretty good on that. But on the Jamboard, they can't follow along with you. And in fact, maybe even the one I gave you, we kind of did this side-by-side comparison of why would you want to use a Jamboard versus a Pear Deck. They're very similar, but the thing with Pear Deck is it does have only those 6 particular question types. So they can't manipulate things around as much. I've seen some people use it in very interesting, creative ways, but they're not pulling the manipulatives as much.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to stay till the last second.
I'm sorry. I just had one other question just came up into my mind. So we talked about the classroom setup. Would you recommend like one computer is enough for teacher, or 2, or I was almost thinking, I don't know, 1 would not be enough, but
honestly, it kind of depends on your setup. I'll be honest, when I was teaching, I had the one good computer, and then I had my clunky one that I honestly duct taped together. It was seriously duct taped together, trying to attach to the board, and that thing could run like one thing at a time. If I wanted to run a meet or something on that board, that thing would not survive, and it would like make a weird screeching noise at me the whole entire time. I think since then, that was like 2 or 3 years ago, we've hopefully gotten some better teacher computers out there. But it kind of depends on how you want to manage that space. So if I only had one good computer, I would probably rely on that one good computer to do something. If you do have the ability to have 2 computers, like maybe you have a computer you can hook up to your board, you can have your computer too running a meet, and that's kind of nice because you could pick it up and you can take it around and move it with you, or you can sit it there in a small group or something, protected to do that. But it just kind of depends on what you have. And then also, if a student doesn't bring a device or doesn't have something, or they're not bringing it back and forth from home, you also have to think maybe any of the computers I have in my class have to now potentially be a backup, number one. And then the other thing we were suggesting is build some sort of component to whatever you're teaching electronically, even if everybody in the class isn't on the meet, but have activities and things that are electric or digital, because if a COVID breakout does happen and you can't come the next day and they can't get access to papers or things, now you have a problem. So it's just this weird logistical stuff we've been having interesting conversations about. I'm sure Maggie has too.
Oh, right.
And I've seen people do so many unique things with their devices and everything. I've seen teachers like running a Google Meet on their computer, and then they're in the Meet on their phone, where when they're walking around with the students, they'll look up at the board and they'll see like a student is either not doing their work or something like that, and then they'll say into their phone, Antonio, will you please get back to the assignment, please? And then they'll keep walking around to watch the students. So it's really just getting creative with your devices and thinking about, what am I going to need these devices for? Because that has to drive everything. Don't have two computers for the sake of having two computers. Just think about what is the purpose of it. And if that purpose supports using those two devices, just find the best two devices that you're able to do so, and make it work in your classroom, because you can get creative with a variety of them.
Right. Oh, it's just hard to visualize right now. I think I will have to go back and
course.
And it's like setting up your classroom. I don't know if you were like that, but I would always set it up, and then I'd be like, I hate this. And then I move all my desks around, and then I'd be like, ooh, I like it. And then I'd be like, no, I changed my mind. And it's kind of the same thing, just with the tech stuff. You're probably going to be throwing cords around and who knows what, but yeah.
Absolutely. And, we always say this with the majority of the trainings that we do and everything, try one thing. Just try one thing, and if it doesn't work, build on it from there and think about why it didn't work and what would you need to do to make that successful for the next time. We always spend so much time trying to predict the future, and unfortunately we can't. And so there's no magic wand that says this is what will work in our classrooms and everything like that. But just try one thing and see if that works. If it doesn't, think about why and just build from there.
Okay, sounds good. Now, and you said that I can go into YouTube and type in the TLN hub.
Yeah, just type in the hub curriculum, and it'll allow you to subscribe to the channel. And then all of the videos are there.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
Yay.
So kind of building on that, the one thing that has worked is right here at my kitchen table with the second monitor and the dot cam. So what can you tell me what the advantage would be to use the Pro board? Just that it's bigger?
It depends. If you want to run everybody in the class with all of their devices at the exact same time, you just run that risk of the feedback part. So you kind of do need to make sure that everybody has their headphones in and that they're constantly muting their mic, and that when they want to talk, they unmute, and then they mute when they don't talk, or else it's going to pick up everyone and everything in that room. Yes. So the idea of running it on the Promethean board is so that if the students in the class don't have it or aren't running it, they can see everything that's on your computer, almost like they would be on the Meet, without having to worry about the feedback and all that stuff running through Google Meet.
Okay. And that's the part I'm most worried about, is the feedback. I mean, I know we'll figure it out. It figures itself out pretty quickly, but I'm like, that stuff kind of flusters me, because I'm like, I'm not quite sure what to do, when you get that feedback. So I'll just be looking for your training videos on how to make sure you do not get that feedback.
Okay. I will tell them, I'm like, now that we've had this big conversation, I need a whole section that's prevent feedback.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I know I've spoken to a couple of my colleagues, and they're worried about that as well, because it's it's do or die right then. You don't have a whole day to figure it out. I mean, it's boom, 7:45. Let's figure it out.
Right, and then it's really hard because it's not like you have 7 computers you can just throw in the classroom and be playing with them or something.
Exactly.
I saw a teacher, and she teaches first grade. And what I saw this teacher do is that she had her kids like in their desks. Obviously, this wasn't APS and everything. I saw that she had her kids in their desks and some of the students at home. And if feedback pops up, they have a signal in their classroom. She holds up her little mute mic picture, and she's like, mute. So as soon as the feedback starts happening, the kids have a procedure to just mute. And then she's like, now my turn. And then she says, I'm going to unmute. Everybody I'll stay on mute. And so then they just kind of test it out to like make sure that, whatever was causing the feedback just gets shut down right away. So she actually had a procedure for her kids for when feedback happens. And I was so impressed by that. I was like, how brilliant. Like the kids are the problem solvers. Like they know that if feedback happens, they all go on mute. So
okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm gonna do that one. Okay, perfect.
And one of the other semi-advantages of just having the meet open to you instead of kind of like smushed or squished or whatever is you can click on those people really quick. And if you have the host controls, you can mute everybody now. So you can kind of mute everyone like, okay, hold on. And you can mute everyone in class or there if they kind of forget it. But then it's just hard because one of the other things we're noticing is like looking, from what other people are doing is a student will start talking and they're all excited and they're sharing an answer and the teacher's like, that was a beautiful answer. And then the kid, on the meet at home is like, what did they say? And you're like, oh, I didn't have them unmute. So it's just getting in that habit of.
mm-hmm. Yeah. The video of the kinder teacher, and Tina, I'm pretty sure you've seen this one where she has like the microphone like mute and unmute and all that kind of stuff, and like she kills me every single time because she's literally just holding up these little signs all the time, but they're good practices because it reminds the students in the classroom and in the meet to unmute when you need to say something.
So are you saying like right now, like, 4 of us are unmuted. Mm-hmm. But when we're in the classroom with the pro board, then the teacher also has to be on mute if the one kid is talking?
Yes, essentially. So if I know it's going to be like awful. If I wanted to get on a separate computer, what happens is the how do I put it? The sound from this computer is traveling to the microphone on this computer, which is pulling up the sound from this computer, and it's essentially making that feedback loop. It's the same thing when you're talking on like a microphone and you go shove it next to the speaker and it makes that crazy noise. That is basically what's happening on my Google Meet. So if I went on a separate computer and I was running it and I had the microphone on, that's what creates that crazy like sound. And if sometimes you can be far enough away to do it, and it won't pick up much, but then it really kind of depends because I can't figure out if it's certain computers or something like that, because one of them was like within, a foot distance. I'm like, oh, that works out pretty good. And then it was a different device or something, and then it just screamed.
Yeah. Okay, good to know. All right, ladies, thank you for answering all my questions. I appreciate you guys so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, have a good evening.
Bye. Great job, Tina.
Yeah.